You wouldn't play a game the second half the same way you would the first, especially if you had the lead. This is the Retirement Halftime Show, helping you maintain your lead in retirement.
We're here today with Alex Joyce with ReJoyce Financial. With today's inflation and recession concerns, a lot of people are talking about gold and silver. Is that a smart financial play right now?
I think it definitely depends, right, on the situation. When we start looking at the topic of gold and silver being a commodity.
Yes.
And so we look at risk behind commodity investments, right? And so if individuals are in a position to palette that, if you will, from a risk perspective, we can explore things like that. But then I think it gets into what are we trying to do?
I know.
Right? You know what I mean? Are we trying to make money like we would by buying Apple stock?
Right.
Because generally and traditionally, right? I know we're in a non-traditional market.
Gosh.
But traditionally, why somebody would add commodities such as precious metals, gold, platinum, silver, palladium, things like that, is to hedge inflation.
Right.
One would say, well, yeah, we're in a pretty high inflation environment or economy right now. And so that's why you see gold peaking at all-time highs.
Yeah.
And so, but it's also very important to know when investing in things like that, and just like our economy has peaks and troughs, it's very important to understand how those commodities work. They're mean reverting. They go up, they go down, but they revert back to the mean.
Yeah.
And so again, by taking on that risk and adding such an asset class in a portfolio, they do not, they're negatively correlated from stocks and bonds, which means they go in different directions.
Okay.
And so we have to understand, cool idea, good idea. Let's get past that and let's just make sure we're doing it for a purpose.
Well, it's funny because when you talk about gold, I immediately think of my grandparents who literally did have the gold bars like hidden under their mattress. And I think Nixon put a stop to doing that in 1971 when you couldn't buy the bars
big
anymore,
bars.
I guess.
You know, you look on TV and you look at TV shows, right? And you say they're pushing gold. We're getting a ton of questions.
It's true.
And the reason they're doing that is because, for historically, they've been the biggest, gold right now has been the biggest hedge against inflation.
Okay.
And so bars of gold, storable commodities, but it's important to know when I say storable, the opposite as well.
I see.
Because for a lot of people, they don't know that they can buy these types of commodities, precious metals, if you would, electronic as well, like you would buy Microsoft or IBM.
Yeah.
They generally don't mail you a stock certificate, right? They hold that in your portfolio electronically. You could do the same thing with different ETFs on these asset classes, commodities as well.
Okay, so I want to ask you, since the dollar isn't backed by gold anymore, investing in this precious metal, it won't help you if inflation hits. Is that true?
You know what? I think that when we start, and that's just it. Right.
Yeah.
And if you ask me personally, and I'm opinionated in my industry, and I'm not afraid to voice that. I think once we start really thinking about storable commodities, I think first we have to understand what it takes to store the commodity. And then we have to purchase just enough, and then we have to think about how we want to use that. All right. Because, hey, when you would buy something or something goes down, generally what you do is you cash it in, you can pocket that profit, taking bars of gold somewhere or silver coins and things like that. Again, so we can start to do estate planning around that.
Okay.
But then also think of if the world gets into a place where it's that bad, where we're buying gold bars, I think that's better off to be thought through and maybe viewed as currency as opposed to commodity.
Okay. So I know everyone's unique, right, in their investments. Everyone's unique. Every situation is unique. It depends on the person and the situation.
It does. I think, if I can elaborate on that, just real fast, I think that gold, commodities, these types of investments, or any investment at all, it is very important to understand, again, the purpose. What are we trying to achieve? Are we purchasing something like this electronically? Are we purchasing it storable? Are we trying to make money? Are we trying to hedge inflation? Let us just sit down and understand the goal behind it so we can give best advice at time of implementation.
Yeah, and there's a lot of old wives' tales out there. Like I've heard, if you should buy silver if you're investing when times are good, buy gold when you're investing when times are bad. They're not tried and true.
Listen,
principles.
The world has changed, hasn't
changed.
it? And it's changing daily.
Yeah.
So the best thing to do for people is just to call and get advice.
Absolutely. As always, great information, Alex. We have a lot more coming up. Stay tuned.
Coming up next on the Retirement Halftime Show, 3 of the most common Medicare mistakes. You might not ever be able to fix some of these errors. And Purdue basketball coach Matt Painter talks about what his retirement looks like to him, what the older coaches told him at a young age that still guides his planning today. Text Alexander today and schedule a visit to discuss your financial goals for tomorrow and beyond. Text 707-ReJoyce.
The journey to retirement takes many twists and turns. Don't take that trip alone. Let the team at ReJoyce Financial be your co-pilot. The expert team of financial planners can create a roadmap that gets you to your goals. They'll work with you to create a financial plan that gives you confidence and peace of mind. Start the process today. Call 317-903-9157 or text 707-ReJoyce. Rejoice in your retirement.
You're watching the Retirement Halftime Show, powered by ReJoyce Financial.
You're watching the Retirement Halftime Show. I'm your host, Alexander Joyce, and with me today is Angie Paisley. She is director of our Medicare division, if you will, and also really oversees operations from processing. So more than one role, but really does both very well, right?
Thank you.
I appreciate that. Really, we're talking about the topic of Medicare today because it is so crucial. You know, our practice, of course, is holistic. We pay attention to all pieces of the overall financial planning puzzle. In my professional opinion, Medicare is one of them, right?
Yes,
and I think it's a big piece of putting together those complexities, if you would. And so, for our audience, our listeners, they've seen you before. Let's really just kind of go over the most common, if you will, oversights from a Medicare perspective. What are the things that, in your opinion, when it comes to Medicare, what are things that people they commonly miss, oversee, and just they need to know, if you will?
Yeah, Alex, one of the biggest ones is not signing up on time. That's a very, very confusing situation for many people because there's a lot of different rules. Everyone has an initial enrollment period. We've talked about that before. You get a 7-month window, date of birth, month of birth, 3 months prior, 3 months after. But a lot of people who are still working think that it's no problem to defer their Medicare because they still have credible coverage with their job. Sometimes it's not a problem, but it's really important that you find out what is best for you. There's certain things that come into play. During your initial enrollment period, you have guaranteed issue. So if you defer it, you might miss that opportunity to get that guaranteed issue. That's one common important fact.
Guaranteed issue means from medical conditions. Doesn't mean, because I think when I'm sitting with a client and they have this gap is like, they are 62 or 64, and they're getting ready to become Medicare Part A eligible. And so they think they really don't have to do anything. It's just automatically, boom, they're put on Medicare Part A, right? But they still there's something there that they still must do, even though they're employed by their job, right? And they have medical coverage, major medical through the employer. Is there something they need to do?
Yeah, it is a common misconception that everyone is automatically enrolled. I hear that a lot. That does not happen for everyone. Some people need to take that first step and get enrolled for A, or it's not going to happen. B, you have to typically go enroll yourself. That's the one that you can defer, and if you are working, you have that coverage, but you really just want to kind of outweigh your options and see what the best situation for you is. That's why it's so important that you're talking to someone who is a licensed agent.
It is important. I think it's it's something that's I think most people, and it's interesting because, as you just mentioned, some people are automatically enrolled, some people aren't. And so the big thing is, like, which side am I on?
Yeah, and that's where it really gets tricky. It's not a one-stop shop. It's different for everyone.
And then I think the Part A, Part B, I know we'll talk about this in a little bit more detail, but, Part A, just basic, simplistic terms is what?
That is your hospital insurance.
Part B?
Your medical insurance.
And then the Medigap?
That covers everything, things that aren't covered by Medicare.
Part A, Part B, right?
Right.
So that's the gap. And I think, right, and then you started getting into the supplements like Part N, used to be Part F was the best, or the Cadillac. And then you got like all these Gs, and understanding that they are the same plan, but the carrier, if you will, can offer different prices, and that makes it even more confusing.
It does. The way that we like to compare it, it's like gas. It doesn't matter if you're going to Speedway or you're going to Shell, you're putting the same product in your vehicle. Here's where your difference is. Overhead. When you call customer service, are you going to get a group of 500 people and you're going to get an immediate answer, or maybe a group of 5 and you're going to sit on hold for an hour?
There you go.
And that's what it all is.
Absolutely. You know, when it comes down to it, having someone like you in our office that can educate and guide our people, our clients, through this difficult time, because, you know, if not done appropriately or correctly, the big thing is cost. Taxation, penalties.
Definitely.
Right? I mean, these are things that we rather do right the first time than go back and try to correct something, because it becomes very problematic. And it becomes very, just challenging, if you will. Let's do it right
we're dealing with the federal government. Sometimes there's not corrections. Sometimes it's a one and done.
I won't go down that road, right? The federal government. So, Angie, I really appreciate it.
Of course.
If there's more education anybody wants to know about Medicare, whether it be Medicare or Medigap or Part A or Part B, pick up the phone. Don't hesitate to take that leap of faith. Stay tuned, folks. You're watching the Retirement Halftime Show. We'll be right back.
Next on the Retirement Halftime Show, Purdue basketball coach Matt Painter's advice for dealing with down markets, what he does every time he reads his latest portfolio statement, and picking a credit card that's right for your spending patterns. What to consider before swiping at the register ahead.
Hoping to have enough income to last through retirement isn't a strategy, it's a recipe for failure. Everyone needs a tangible plan. ReJoyce Financial can help you get on the right path. Come in for a visit and let's discuss what's going on with your financial well-being. We're an inclusive team that won't offer judgment, only ideas on how to make your money work for you. Give us a call at 317-903-9157. Let us help you rejoice in retirement.
You're watching the Retirement Halftime Show, powered by ReJoyce Financial.
Planning to win. Coaching strategies for financial success. Here's Alexander Joyce and Purdue University men's basketball head coach, Matt Painter.
You're watching the Retirement Halftime Show. I am your host, Alexander Joyce, and the theme of today's show, of course, is you would not play a game the second half the same way you did the first, especially if you've got the lead. And with me today is head basketball coach here at Purdue, Matt Painter. And one of the big questions, if you don't mind, Matt, that I wanted to ask you is, because you've been doing this quite some time.
Right.
Right? I mean, right at 30 years or so, right? That's a while, right?
Yes.
And your track record of success is phenomenal. When you've been doing this so long, I'll just ask, what does retirement look like to you?
Yeah, well, you always plan, like when you're younger, like you'll see older people in the profession and say, hey, make sure you take care of yourself, make sure you take care of your family.
Sure.
Be prepared for that. So that was something that was really pounded into my head as a young coach from older coaches. So I've always been on top of that piece. Like, what does that look like? Now, I'm not on top of what retirement looks like from a physical standpoint. Like, when you have something, I've been playing organized basketball since I was 5 years old. I played in a third grade league when I was 5. I've been coaching for 30 years. And you say, hey, I can't wait to kind of get to the end and do nothing. And we all realize when you're competitive, you can't just do nothing. And so I love what I'm doing, have a passion for it. Love being at Purdue, very fortunate to be the head coach at Purdue as long as I've had. But there's also some goals out there that we haven't accomplished. We've always fought, got there, got kind of the end. We've been to a handful of Sweet 16s, but we want to go further. And so for me, that's what I want to do for our fans, want to do for our players, our former players, is get to a Final Four, try to win a national championship before you have some thought, of that retirement. I know that I'm going to enjoy being done, but I know I'm going to have to do something and probably do something in relation, to the game of basketball.
Yeah. You're not one of those guys that retires and then comes back, right? And then retires and then comes back, right?
Yeah.
I'm just playing. But that's phenomenal. And I don't think, I never knew that, I know that we have a lot of clients with us that have great stories, especially as it relates to sports. Right. And it's interesting to hear their story about starting at such a young age, right? Maybe kind of go into, if you don't mind, some of the discipline.
Yeah.
Right, that goes into that, because
exactly.
Being a head coach isn't the easiest thing to do.
Right. Yeah. When I got to Southern Illinois, I was 28 years old. I left Eastern Illinois as an assistant. I went with Bruce Weber. to Southern Illinois. He told me I had to save money monthly. And I was making 30 grand. I was like, where out of that 30 grand am I going to? He says, I don't care what the number is, you're going to save money. So I saved $400 a month. And then I went 5 years of doing that. And then I bought my first house at 32. And so that kind of started me. It's like, you know, the old saying, it's not how much money you make, it's how much money you save. Like, understand that. And, you know, what's really hard, especially when you're an athlete, is kind of thinking past your own nose.
Yeah.
You know, start thinking about other people. You start your family, you start to have kids, you start to do that. But in general, think about other people, like think about, so that plan when it comes to retirement, you know, is big. And then as you see it, you know, grow and the different things that you do to prepare for that, it's kind of cool to watch. You know, you want to be able to set up your family, you want to be able to set up, but you also want to, from a selfish standpoint, you also want to be able to set up yourself, your wife, everybody, to be able to live the way you want to live, you know, after you're finished, you know, with your life of employment.
That is so true, you know, and it's true because I'm listening and I love talking to you about this because I see it through you know, the vision that we're creating for our clients, right? And starting them at a younger age. You know, I've owned this practice for well over a decade, and it's, you know, we've had clients that have come in, have grown.
Right.
We've been through some good times and bad times because establishing a relationship, it's not always you know, roses. Right. And you have to go through that. There's some give and take. There's some resistance there.
Yeah.
But, you know, understanding there is light at the end of the tunnel.
Right.
And there is something that we have to do to prepare for that. Building a plan to get there, as I always stress, is really not optional. Right. Because there's a lot of different firms out there. Again, they focus on one side, which is put money in, keep saving, keep saving, keep saving. And keep saving, right? There's no real conversation about once you've saved this, here's what you do with that.
Yeah.
And it's even more frustrating when we have markets like this. You know, this is a fortuitous conversation because, you know, sometimes it feels like I keep saving, and then next thing I know, the NASDAQ is at a 3-year low and I've lost 3 years of my saving life.
Yeah.
And so, you know, how do you feel about that?
Yeah. Well, first of all, like what you deal with is the numbers are the same for every firm. Like, you don't get different numbers than other firms.
That's true.
And a lot of times when people get emotional or they do something knee-jerk reaction, they put it towards you, when in reality you didn't create the numbers. But what you build through time and coaching and in your position is trust. You've been talking about the whole time without saying it.
Yeah.
Actually saying the word. And that's what's so important. That gets lost in our world in recruiting. You know, I would rather say something that maybe isn't quite as appealing to them, but it's the truth.
Right.
Just like when you get into that bear market and you're there and they're like, hey, what the heck is going on? Well, this isn't, you know, you take it as a client like it's just affecting you. Then you got to take a step back and say, oh, hold on here, this is affecting everybody.
Yeah.
Like, I'm gonna pull my money out here, I'm gonna do this.
Yeah, right.
And like, those are knee-jerk. You see that's kind of the comparison that we have right now with the transfer market. And so now when something doesn't work, I always say if you can't use your left hand at Purdue, you can't use your left hand at Miami of Ohio too.
That's right.
Like, you still have a bad left hand.
That's right.
So like when you leave, you're really chasing something that doesn't exist if you don't realize, hey, I got to improve. I got to get better. I got to get here. A lot of times in the market, you know, you got to hold tight. Like, you got to understand, hey, this could happen. Just like we're not going to have a parade when good things happen. You got to stay on an even keel. Well, basketball is a lot of the same way too. Don't get too high when things are going your way, and don't get too low. You know, Coach Katie used to always talk about stay on an even keel, stay balanced, understand the swings of things. We can't be on an emotional swing in both of these worlds.
That's so true.
Next, choosing the right person to implement your estate plans once you're called home. The problems some executors run into while carrying out your wishes. This is the Retirement Halftime Show. Text Alexander today and schedule a visit to discuss your financial goals for tomorrow and beyond. Text 707-ReJoyce.
Do you remember this? How about that? Do you remember? The journey to retirement hasn't always been easy. I'm Alexander Joyce. Let us build a retirement plan you can rely on. A financial plan that gives you confidence and peace of mind. a legacy plan that protects them. And let us start that process today. And let us help you rejoice in your retirement.
You're watching the Retirement Halftime Show, powered by ReJoyce Financial.
You're watching the Retirement Halftime Show. I'm your host, Alexander Joyce, and with me today is Alan Kowalski. He is our estate planning attorney and wealth strategist here at ReJoyce Financial. Alan, we're talking about the people carrying out your wishes from an estate planning perspective, right? Whether it be a will or a trust, or the people that are in your life that you trust to make these decisions, right? Moving forward, perhaps without your physical presence, right? And so kind of walk us through what that decision really looks like if I am able-bodied, a healthy man, right? And I am looking for that person to carry out my legacy and make sure it goes according to plan. Tough decision, right? Especially maybe perhaps even a little tougher if the people that are in that circle aren't the most trustworthy, or you have question, concern, and you're kind of reaching. And so I don't know if we want to go that far. I think that is certainly an individual conversation to be had, because we get it all the time where they're like, well, I got nobody that I trust to be able to carry out these wishes and these goals. And so maybe give us a little bit of, give us some context. Fire up.
Absolutely. Thank you, Alex.
You're welcome.
So, choosing a personal representative or a trustee. I'll be talking in terms of personal representative, which is the person who carried out your wishes under your will, your last will and testament. So in that context, you are gone at this point.
Sure.
When we die, our estate comes into being. And as I say, our estate is really, it's just everything we owned when we died.
Right.
Okay, less everything that we owed.
Right. Less everything that's a balance sheet.
Right. And then what's left is our net estate.
Right.
From a financial standpoint.
We got to figure it out for us.
So who are we leaving in charge? So, and what is a personal in Indiana, we call it a personal representative. Sometimes in other states and sometimes in the movies, you hear executor, but they're synonymous terms. So a personal representative does a lot. So this is a serious decision. In addition to finding that person that you do trust, and I tell you, no matter what, you just need to find somebody you trust. And,
right.
And unfortunately, not everyone has
100%,
that.
100%. I understand.
There's really no magic cure to that. You got to find someone you trust, or you entertain the idea of hiring a professional in this role.
That's right.
At a minimum, to maybe do this in a co-capacity with somebody you kind of trust.
I understand. Okay. Somebody has to come in, and we got to work with that.
What does the personal representative do when you pass away? They've got a lot to do. They've got to pretty much go through your information and your mail and figure out what you own, figure out where it is, figure out who you may owe money to. All right, and make good faith effort to ascertain those folks and give them notice that if this person owed money, come get your debts paid. They've got a responsibility for taking an inventory of your property, protecting your property, keeping it insured, receiving your mail, changing the address. There's a lot of work here.
So much work.
A lot of work. Valuing your property at the date of death. Going ahead and ultimately distributing the property after they pay off those debts, and then eventually closing out the estate with the court.
That's right.
So I'm forgetting a couple. If you've got a safe deposit box, they're responsible for taking an inventory of that. One practical thing to mention here is you don't want to leave your, we've talked about common mistakes in the past. You don't want to leave your personal representative not knowing where your stuff is.
One of the things I've seen, Alan, and you probably have seen this a lot as well, is communication.
Yes.
Right. This person, the most important thing, they can check mail and they can get inventory, they can be organized. Right. I mean, it's worse to be not organized with something like this. But by not being organized, what happens is it takes a long time. And when it takes a long time, who's banging down the door? The beneficiaries. You understand what I'm saying? Yeah. And so what happens when it takes a long time, and now there's pressure from the beneficiaries, there's a lack of communication. Yeah. And that's why we say all the time that even the closest families, sometimes that breaks them up. And it starts, there's one thing that breaks them up, and it starts with an M. And so, but again, the communication, it's money, right? Naturally, it's money that will fold and collapse and cause lots of issues in a family dynamic, and friends as well, right? It just kind of ruins a relationship, like lack of communication always will, right. Especially if there's money involved. And so, the most important thing that I can stress when working with us, being a holistic firm, right? You as our attorney, planning firm, tax piece, all of it, because taxes, filing that person's taxes, right? it becomes an issue.
Yeah.
Understanding if there is lost taxes, or understanding the dollars and cents from a budgeting perspective. I mean, we see it all the time, and so that's why we're having this conversation, this legal conversation, if you will. Right. And how does it connect to the tax piece that we have for our clients, and how does that connect with the financial planning and the wealth management piece? Well, it may not today for people watching, but it will someday.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And so we encourage people to pick up the phone, and we encourage the people to go to our website. We encourage people to connect with us at some capacity, so we can meet a friend, start a relationship, and see how we can help.
Yeah.
You're watching the Retirement Halftime Show. Stay tuned. There's more to come. I'm Alexander Joyce, President, CEO of ReJoyce Financial. Getting the education you need for a successful retirement is key. That's why I've written my second book, ReJoyce in Your Retirement, Everything You Need to Know to Get Everything You Want. The book covers topics like identifying the income gaps, new ideas for investing, taxes and retirement, your legacy beyond dollars and cents, and much more. I've written this in an easy to understand format so that just about anyone can get the most out of it. To get a copy of ReJoyce in Your Retirement, Everything You Need to Know to Get Everything You Want, you can go to Amazon. But if you're one of the first callers, you can get a complimentary signed copy of this book just by scheduling a no-cost, no-obligation visit. This book is packed with information that will help you get the most out of your retirement years. If you want to know more about successful retirement strategies, then call now. Education is key. And let us help you rejoice in your retirement.
Today's tip of the week for stronger financial health. Using a credit card can be convenient or even necessary at some businesses that don't accept other forms of payment. But before you swipe or tap your card, pick a card that's right for you. You may strive to pay off your balance every month to avoid interest charges, but the reality is many credit card holders don't. If you already have a credit card, let history be your guide. If you've carried balances in the past or think you are likely to do so in the future, consider credit cards that have the lowest interest rates. These cards typically do not offer rewards and don't charge an annual fee. If you consistently pay off your balance every month, then you may want to investigate cards that offer rewards. Always compare the value of the rewards you expect to receive and use with the annual fee you might pay. Your research could show that the rewards aren't worth the cost. If that's the case, look for a different reward card. That's today's tip of the week for stronger financial health.
There's some things in life we can always get back. Money, that's one of them. But time, that can never be replaced. Your kids, grandkids, they don't care how big your house is or the type of car you drive. The time they spend with you, that's what matters most. Allow us to help take your financial concerns away so you can enjoy the more important things in life. Call us today at 317-903-9157. Schedule a no-obligation visit and rejoice in your retirement. Thank you for watching the Retirement Halftime Show. If you have questions about today's show, give us a call, send us a text, or go to our website. Most importantly, maintain your lead in retirement. I'm Alexander Joyce, and I'll see you next time.